Thank you so very much for being back. And if you just joined us, this is Enterprise Morning, reaching you from Enterprise Television. On our main conversation for today, the federal government has reaffirmed its commitment to enforcing the no work, no pay policy as the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, commenced its 2 weeks nationwide warning strike on Monday, October 13th. In a circular signed by the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, vice-chancellors of all federal universities were directed to ensure full compliance with labor laws by conducting roll calls and submitting attendance report of academic staffs. The government expressed disappointment at ASUU's decision to embark on strike despite ongoing discussions, warning that salaries of lecturers who fail to work during the period will be withheld. However, members of the Congress of University Academics, CONUA, and the National Association of Medical and Dental Academics, NAMDA, who are not part of the strike, are to continue receiving full entitlements. The strike aimed at pressing home demands such as conclusion of the renegotiated 2009 FGN ASUU agreement and the release of withheld salaries has led to a widespread shutdown of academic activities across universities, including University of Abuja, University of Jos, University of Unilorin, ASUU, FUNAAB, and many other universities. At the University of Ibadan, for example, lecturers and offices remained locked, while the Bafemi Awolowo University branch of the ASUU also confirmed compliance. Let's get talking. We still have Barrister His Greatness with us. Thank you so very much, Barrister, for being here. We truly do appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barrister. Now let's get talking on this. For some of us who have been in Nigeria for as much as we would love to, strike by ASUU is no longer news any longer to us. In the 80s, it was there. In the 90s, it had its spiral, head all over the place. The 2000, we had strikes all over the place. Do you think that ASUU is becoming strikes by ASUU? That is, it's becoming something that it must happen, even if their demands are met. Speak to me on this, please.
Well, like I've always said, Nigerians, we like fire brigades activities. And again, too, it appears, and not only appears, it is that except you do the last resort, which strike ought to be. Strike ought to be the last resort. Strike is usually undertaken when negotiations have collapsed or agreements agreed upon during negotiation are not implemented by the parties involved. And after waiting, after giving time, after deadlines are broken, then the only option, which is the last resort, ASUU will fall back to is embarking on strikes. And then I really want to put the blame entirely on that of the federal government. Many a times, the setup on Nosode committee and several other committees, prominent people who negotiated on behalf of the federal government. But when it comes to, it's not even the negotiation that is the issue, then agreements were reached. When it comes to now implementing these agreements, you see the government, the federal government, reneging.
But the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Barrister, sorry for interjecting. Barrister, sorry for interjecting. The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not in any way engage in the negotiation that happened in 2009. It was President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. So don't you think it's the responsibility of the government of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan that did not make the right thing and should not be blamed on the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
But clearly, that government is a continuum now. When Tinubu took over from Buhari in 2023, he inherited both assets and liabilities. And he has been spending the assets now, financial assets. He has been basking on them. So how about the liabilities? Do you abandon it? The foreign reserve, Jonathan left in 2015, 10 years ago. I'm sure President Tinubu inherited it and is utilizing it one way or the other. So the debts, the deficits, and the obligations that we also inherited from Jonathan to Buhari by Tinubu, he is obligated to also inherit them and deal with them accordingly. So you cannot take assets and reject liabilities. Like I said earlier, government is a continuum. Again, too, if, for example, there's still a window of opportunity. If, for example, he's not comfortable with the 2009 agreement entered into by Jonathan, he still has the window. There's still a window of opportunity for him to carry out what we refer to as renegotiation. You can renegotiate it. And of course, during the time of Buhari, certain renegotiations were done, but he still failed to fulfill the obligations of government. I think then, Ngige was Minister of Labor. And of course, the ASUU were very annoyed because Ngige merely engaged the ASUU in many hours of deliberation with no consequential action in terms of compliance. So I think this government, they have claimed that they were well prepared for the job. You know, many a times he said he knew what he was coming to face, meaning that he had understudied all sectors of the Nigerian economy, including the educational aspect, infrastructure, personnel, and all what have you. So he knew exactly what was at stake. So all he needs to do is to roll off his sleeves and deal with the issues. What ASUU is asking for is not so much that cannot be handled. I think one of the things they are asking for is that there must be proper infrastructure in the government-owned university to make to provide a conducive environment to enhance teaching and learning, and also certain other payment platforms that will enhance their remuneration. I can't remember which one now. Should be provided. They even at a point developed their own payment platform that they believed will benefit their members and even the nation. They developed it since they are core professionals, but government refused to adopt it as a payment platform. Then, but for now, we have not seen any clear tertiary educational policy coming from the Tinubu administration. We have not seen. So they need to really put their acts together. What is it they want to even make out of our government-owned university? Is it that they want to go back to the PPP structure model, which former President Olusegun Obasanjo proposed about 18 years ago before his exit, where there will be where the universities will be completely autonomous? Is it that model he wants to pursue, or he still wants the government-owned university to be 100% under the federal government sponsorship? So we have not gotten any clear, definite tertiary education policy from this government in 2.5 years. In 2.5 years, and that is a big dent on this present administration. So I think that what they need to do now, 2 weeks is a warning strike. They have not embarked on an indefinite strike as of now. So I want to believe that there will be high-level engagement with ASUU, not just Ministry of Labor. No, I want to see senior officials of this present government involved, such as the chief of staff, the secretary to the federal government, and maybe the vice president. I want to see this level of senior leadership of this administration being involved in engaging ASUU, in properly dissecting what their issues are, and in coming up with an elaborate educational policy which they will now religiously drive in their remaining 1.5 years in office. That's what I want to see.
All right, but at this point, it's becoming a perennial issue with ASUU. Every successive government that comes would have issues with ASUU. In your own estimation, what do you think should be the best solution? We've all passed through the four walls of tertiary institutions in Nigeria. If you ask me, I know what the school I went to, what their problems are. You equally would remember some of the problems your own school have, and what you think should be the best solution. But let's take a look at it from a holistic angle. What do you think should be the best bet? Should we concession universities such that it will be taken care of by private individuals, since government cannot run its agencies? How do you think, or what do you think should be the best bet if you are there to advise the president at this point?
Well, at this point, I will not say they should concession our government universities, because doing that, it means that in a situation where over 45% of Nigerians are suffering from multidimensional poverty, including poverty in ability in accessing education. Let me not even say qualitative education, just education, ordinary, common, available education. Then if you concession the university, it means that you will increase the number of Nigerians who are suffering from multidimensional poverty in terms of education to even 90 to 95%. The private schools now, how many people can pay 3 million naira? I heard that a private school, one of my colleagues, the daughter is in a private school I will not mention, they are charging 3 million. How many people can afford that? How many Nigerians have 3 million in their accounts, both saving, current or domiciliary accounts? How many? So it means that if you once you concessionalize or privatize the government university, it means that you have seen that tertiary education is now strictly for the rich. That's what you have said. So you cannot do that. Instead, what I will advise government to do, to start prioritize funding of education and devote at least 5% of our budget to funding education. And if, just as I'm talking to you now, I'm holding a Bible, I'm just doing a fast calculation. If our budget for 2025, for example, is 50 trillion naira, and we devote 5%, it means that education will have 2.5 trillion in the budget of 2025. And I think that will go a long way, because for now, primary education is in the hands of the state governments and private sector. Secondary education is largely in the hands of state governments and private sector, even though we still have federal government colleges, yes, and unity schools, around about Nigeria. So if we can devote and properly utilize 5% of, because I know that for now we are still operating budget of 2024, we are still operating the supplementary budget of 2024, and we are also still operating the budget of 2025. So if we can set aside 5% of the budget of 2025 for education, making it a priority, I'm sure it will go a long way in taking care of the obligations that previous governments have entered with ASUU. And it will also go a long way in enhancing, in solving the decay, infrastructural decay in our tertiary institutions. Because the truth about the whole thing is that there's so much decay. In fact, if not NEFUND and private assistance from alumni, many of the government universities now will not even have functional lecture theaters. They will not. So if we can, apart from the fact that tuition fees in many of the federal universities have been raised against the spirit of government sponsorship of these federal universities. But if I am saying that if we can provide a good chunk of the funding by allocating a good percentage of our budget for tertiary institutions, then this strike will be a thing of the past. But you cannot kick the can down the road and say, oh, the problem is solved. And that's what previous governments have been doing, unfortunately. Neither can you sweep your debts under the carpet and say, oh, forget about it, it's done and dusted. No, you have to deal with issues. Issues in life, financial commitments and obligations, they are real. Even if you get drunk for a moment, when the alcohol clears from your system, you will still be confronted with those pressing financial challenges. So I call on the present government to fold their long sleeves and do the hard work. It's not any big deal. If we can borrow for very unnecessary issues, then we should be able to borrow to properly fund the infrastructural deficit in our educational development centers throughout Nigeria.
Very well said, Barrister. My last quick question is this. Bishop Coker, once said it's only in Nigeria you would see a situation where people would, third class, right, are the ones giving jobs, employing those with first class. And people with no results at all, or fake results like Uche Nnaji and many others, the president equally has the issue of legitimacy of his Chicago State University results. People without results or issues with their results are the one leading whole Nigeria. But let's take a look at how the professors in different universities have aided and abated this corruption that we have in Nigeria. Most of them, like Peter Oban, who made it possible for Senate President Godswill Akpabio to be the Senate President today. He rigged for him and all that. So do you think that all the issue we have, especially with non-attending to issues of ASUU, is as a result of those professors who have been placed the responsibility of returning officers but have turned around to become complicit, and which has turned around to debase the situation that we have today in Nigeria? Do you think we should equally give them a little bit of blame as much as we blame the federal government for a whole lot of the problems?
Personally, if I want to blame, if there is a single institution that I will single out for the greatest chunk of the blame, it will be the judiciary. Because if after the judiciary, any person can commit any atrocity at any time and anywhere. Every person can do what is wrong, but these incentives must be religiously and timeously applied. If the executive, if the legislature, or if ministries under their watch violate rules and regulations, make compromises, carry out acts of corruption, the judiciary ought to be that last man standing, that headmaster that will carry a very strong metal iron whip and flog them, all of them, into line. and restore order, law and order. But so once that disincentive by the institution that plays that check and balance to now apply that disincentive is inefficient, is unable to apply it efficiently as at when due, then what you have is anarchy, which we are now experiencing in Nigeria, not only in our educational sector, but in all sectors of our national life. There's complete disharmony. Is it police? We name it. All sectors are broken in Nigeria, and that is just the truth. And that is why we all must not demand for more than electoral reform. The number one reform required in Nigeria now is judicial reform. How are our judges employed? How are they appointed? Who should head the NGC? They should, even writing petition, the best friend for National Judicial Council should be petitioners. They are their partners, they are best friends. And I'm saying, let me just use this opportunity to say this before I go any place, that I want to advise the National Judicial Council that instead of calling petitioners serial petitioners, see them as your partners, see them as whistleblowers, protect them, embrace petitioners. Because without petitioners, the National Judicial Council will not have any work to do, because the National Judicial Council does not go out on its own to investigate offenses and violations. It is petitioners that bring these offenses to their knowledge. So I want to advise the National Judicial Council that for it, create an incentive and give the petitioner 5 million naira. Make that public offer that for every successful petition to National Judicial Council, the petitioner will get 5 million naira. So that if we can deal with the corruption in the judiciary, then we can deal with the corruption in the legislative and executive and ministries, departments, agencies of the federal government and all other governments. That is one. Secondly, two, for the professors, what we need to do in schools, in addition to certain things I've laid out, is that many of our courses in our universities, they are outdated. So we need to restructure our curriculum for education that is relevant for the now. Education that can provide jobs, that can make you not in pursuit of white-collar jobs, but that can make you, number one, employable, two, an employer of labor as well, so that you will not become an employer of labor. So we must pursue those kinds. Those are what we should give priority. The traditional courses of even, forgive me, medicine, which people pursue, and the rest, we must look for other innovative course of study that will enhance, especially our youth population, to be readily and immediately employed. Then again, too, is that we must be able to recruit best hands, because we talked about, we've spoken about square pegs and square holes into the university system, especially the government university system. People who have something to offer, people who can deliver the deliverables as at when due. So the personnel running our public tertiary institutions must be such as that can be able to fit in to the 21st century academicians. Answering the title of a doctor and a professor is not sufficient to be a viable educator in government tertiary institution for the Nigeria we want to birth. Is not sufficient. It's a consideration, but in my own honest opinion, it is not sufficient. That's secondly. Then again, too, the timelines for our educational study is something we must now deconstruct. Many a times you find out that why foreign universities appear to even be more attractive and appealing to many of our students is because of the 3 years you have gotten a degree, but in Nigeria 5 years. If we must be able to think outside the box, why don't we reduce the timeline for our educational system, so that it will become and make it more innovative? Because in law we say delay is denial, so we can even reduce the timeline for it, and that amounts to thinking outside the box. The most important thing in education is not how long, it's not how far, but how well. Value for money. That must be our focus. That must be our mindset. That must be our intent. What we want to get, value for money. And this brings me, how can we ensure that we maximize the educational returns of students in our tertiary institutions? How can we do that? That must be the new thinking. So apart from this, ASUU, the normal things ASUU are pursuing, these are the broader things, these are the higher things that must now be brought into the scope of consideration to be able to give us that education, that educational product that will be able to leapfrog Nigeria into the brackets of advanced, well-advanced educational developed economies. Because the truth about the whole thing is that education holds the key to development. Science, trade, industry, education holds the key. An educated people is a liberated people. An educated people is a civilized people. Educated people, of course, are developed people. So we must see that as a priority, and that's why we must give education priority attention. And I urge the government that let them take advantage of this 2-week warning strike to sit down with ASUU and come up with pragmatic and workable agreements which they can abide with, that will move the government tertiary institutions to the next level.
Thank you so very much, Barrister. We truly do appreciate you for your time. You can, of course, say this and over again. We just truly hope that those running Nigeria would listen to some of these things. I truly do not understand how it's difficult for them to perform less when we expect them to do more. The current Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, is a nephrologist. I do not know how much of education or running education that he knows. But of course, what we have in Nigeria is a government of transaction. Give me, I give you. And therefore, we keep having wrong people occupying the right positions in Nigeria. And that's the reason why we cannot seem to find it good and working like other countries around the world. Thank you so very much, Barrister. I truly do appreciate you, as always.
Always a pleasure, and have a lovely Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so very much, Barrister. So that was Barrister, His Greatness Agadaigo, Barrister, Law Public Affairs Analyst, and we truly do appreciate him, and would get to see him some other time on Enterprise Morning today. That's just about the time we have. We'd love to say thank you. Please do well to follow us. You can find us at enterprisetvnews.com. You may equally like, comment, and follow us on all our social media platforms at Enterprise TV7. I am Henry Igwebike. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.